birthday cake kills. Under chandeliers burning white over gold, a little girl clutches her throat as her brother slumps face first into frosting, their tiny bodies jerking on a table set for the city's richest. Guests scream, chairs scrape, crystal shatters. In the center of it all, a stepmother in an emerald gown points a shaking finger at the maid and hisses the word poison. Security closes in, steel handcuffs flashing, while the maid's eyes shine with terrified innocence. At the edge of the room, a quiet cook in a stained apron watches, one hand on a hidden USB in his pocket, as a red light blinks from a secret camera above. He knows something none of them suspect, and if he speaks, this empire burns. Who is he really? What did that camera just capture that someone would kill to erase? The crystal chandeliers of the Malhotra mansion blazed like fallen stars above a scene of pure horror. 10-year-old Anya clutched her throat, her eyes rolling back as her small body convulsed against the silk tablecloth. Beside her, her 6-year-old brother Rohan collapsed forward, his face landing in frosting as 200 horrified guests screamed and scrambled backward. Their stepmother Ria swept toward them in a glittering emerald gown, her perfectly manicured hand pointing across the chaos like an avenging angel. "Her," she shrieked, her voice cutting through the panic. "I saw the maid Mira near the kitchen chemicals this morning. She's always been jealous of our family, of what we have." The young maid stood frozen near the buffet table, her simple cotton uniform suddenly feeling like prison clothes as every wealthy face turned toward her with disgust and suspicion. Police officers materialized from the security detail, their hands already reaching for handcuffs. But at the edge of the grand dining hall, half hidden behind a marble column, a middle-aged man in a cook's apron watched with eyes that held more than simple shock. The small red light from a camera hidden in the chandelier above blinked once, reflecting in those watchful eyes as Aj, the cook, touched his pocket, feeling the shape of a USB drive that might destroy everything or save the only things that mattered. Before we see how this nightmare began and what secrets that hidden camera holds, remember to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon, because the truth behind this poisoning will shake you to your core. 2 months earlier, the same mansion had glowed with a different kind of tension. Arjun Malhotra stood in his private study on the 3rd floor, silk curtains drawn against the Mumbai summer heat, staring at bank statements that made no sense. A self-made billionaire who had built his pharmaceutical empire from a single research patent, Arjun had survived boardroom battles and market crashes, but the numbers before him now felt like a slow poison in his own bloodstream. The children's trust accounts, ironically established to protect Anya and Rohan from exactly this kind of danger, showed irregular transfers, small at first, then growing bolder. Money flowing to shell companies with names that meant nothing. Consultation fees, administrative costs, investment reallocations. His late wife Priya had died 3 years ago in a car accident that still haunted the curved driveway outside, and Arjun had thrown himself into work, traveling constantly, making deals in Singapore and London and Dubai to escape the empty spaces where her laughter used to live. He had remarried just 8 months ago, choosing Ria from among the society women his mother had carefully vetted, choosing her because she seemed confident and capable, someone who could manage the household and care for his children while he managed an empire. She had been attentive during courtship, affectionate with Anya and Rohan, respectful toward the staff. The wedding had filled 3 newspapers' society pages, but lately the children have grown quiet. Anya, once bright and talkative, now picked at her food during the rare dinners Arjun attended, answering his questions about school with single words. Rohan had stopped running to greet him when he came home from the office, instead watching from the stairs with something that looked almost like fear. When Arjun asked them directly if everything was all right, they exchanged glances and nodded too quickly, and he had told himself it was adjustment, the normal friction of blended families, that he should give everyone more time. Then, 3 nights ago, he had returned early from a conference and heard Ria's voice drifting from the garden terrace. She was speaking on her phone, her tone nothing like the warm, cultured voice she used at charity galas. The timeline is tight, she had said, her words sharp and urgent. We need to move the funds before he gets suspicious and returns early. Karen, I don't care about the technical problems, make it work. The children are the key. Once I have full guardianship authority, the rest is just paperwork. There had been a pause, then a laugh that chilled him. He's so busy playing empire builder, he doesn't even notice what's happening in his own home. Arjun had stood in the darkened hallway, his heart pounding against his ribs like something trying to escape, and realized he had brought a stranger into his children's lives. The next morning, he met his oldest friend and personal lawyer, Vikram, at a quiet cafe far from the business district where no one would recognize them. Vikram spread documents across the marble table between their untouched cups. You were right to be concerned, Vikram said quietly, his voice grave. These are draft amendments to your will and the children's trust. They haven't been finalized yet, but they've been prepared by a law firm that specializes in, shall we say, aggressive asset protection. If these documents were executed, Ria would have controlling authority over both your company shares and the children's entire inheritance in the event of your incapacity or death. There are also provisions here for guardianship that would allow her to make unilateral decisions about the children's education, medical care, even their living arrangements, without requiring approval from your extended family or the trust board. Incapacity, Arjun repeated, the word tasting like ash. Or death, Vikram met his eyes. I'm not saying she would harm you, Arjun, but I am saying that someone has thought very carefully about how to take control of everything you've built, and they've used your love for your children as the entry point. The question is, who is helping her? These aren't documents an ordinary person would know how to commission. She has sophisticated advice, financial backing, and probably accomplices inside your own organization. Arjun thought of his children's frightened eyes. He thought of Priya, who had always been able to read people, who would have seen through Ria's performance in minutes. He made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. I can't confront her directly, he said. If she knows I'm suspicious, she'll accelerate whatever she's planning, or she'll hide the evidence so well I'll never prove anything in court. I need to see her real face. I need to know who her accomplices are and what they're planning, and I need evidence that will hold up legally, not just my suspicions. What are you proposing? Arjun pulled out his phone and showed Vikram a series of photographs. There's a man named Ajay Kumar, 52 years old, from my hometown. He runs a small catering business now, but 20 years ago he worked as a line cook in my father's first restaurant. He owes me a favor. I helped put his daughters through college. We look similar enough, with the right haircut and some aging makeup. I'm going to announce a month-long business trip to expand our European operations. I'll stage my departure, complete with airport photos and hotel reservations. Then I'll come back as Ajay, the new cook, someone beneath Ria's notice, someone who can watch and listen and document everything. Vikram stared at him. You want to become a servant in your own house. I want to save my children, Arjun corrected, and I want the truth, whatever it costs me. 3 days later, the Malhotra Mansion's staff gathered in the servants' hall to meet their new colleagues. The long-serving butler, Gopal, made the introductions with his usual formal courtesy. This is Ajay, who will be taking over kitchen duties while our head chef is on medical leave. He comes with excellent references from several respected households. Arjun kept his eyes down, wearing a cheap cotton kurta and loose trousers, his normally styled hair cut short and graying at the temples thanks to careful dye work, his posture slightly stooped. Ria barely glanced at him when Gopal brought him to meet the family, waving one dismissive hand. Fine, whatever. Just make sure the children's meals are on time and the presentation is suitable for guests. We're hosting a dinner for the Cultural Foundation Board next week. The other new staff member was a young woman named Meera Sharma, hired as a junior maid and part-time helper for the children. She was perhaps 25, with long dark hair pulled into a practical braid and eyes that held both gentleness and exhaustion. During the brief staff meeting, she mentioned quietly that she lived in Dharavi and supported her mother, who had diabetes and needed regular medication. I'm grateful for this opportunity, she told Gopal, her voice sincere. I'll work hard, I promise. Arjun watched her from across the room and thought about how Ria had chosen to hire someone poor and vulnerable, someone without connections or power, someone who would be easy to control or, if necessary, easy to destroy. That night, alone in the tiny staff quarters above the garage that would be his home for the next month, Arjun removed his disguise and stared at his real face in the mirror. Somewhere in the main house, his children were sleeping under the watch of a woman who saw them as tools or obstacles. He touched the photograph of Priya he'd hidden in his bag, her laughing at their wedding, surrounded by jasmine flowers, and made a silent promise. I'll protect them, no matter what it takes. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange, painful education. Disguised as Ajay, Arjun spent his days in the mansion's enormous kitchen, a space he had barely noticed in all his years of wealth, preparing simple meals and watching everything. He learned the rhythms of the house from the underside. The staff who worked 14-hour days for wages he could have paid with the cash in his wallet. The elaborate arrangements required to keep just one of his dinner parties running smoothly. The way Gopal quietly covered for younger servants when they made mistakes to shield them from Ria's anger. And he watched Ria transform. When guests arrived, society friends, potential donors, business acquaintances, she was luminous, gracious and witty, remembering everyone's names and preferences, asking about their children's schools and their upcoming vacations. She wore designer saris that probably cost more than Mira made in 6 months, and she moved through rooms like someone accustomed to being admired. She spoke about Anya and Rohan with practiced maternal warmth, describing their progress in expensive tutoring programs and their writing lessons, presenting herself as a devoted stepmother, managing a complex household while her husband built his empire abroad. But when the guests left and the cameras were packed away, a different woman emerged. She snapped at the children for small infractions, a dropped fork, a stain on Rohan's shirt, Anya speaking too loudly during her phone call. She criticized them in ways that felt designed to chip away at their confidence. Your mother was naturally graceful, I don't know why you're so clumsy. Or honestly, Rohan, even 6-year-olds from proper families have better table manners. She replaced their favorite foods with expensive, fashionable meals they didn't like, dismissing their complaints with lectures about sophistication and breeding. She cut their time with Gopal, who had been with the family since before they were born, reassigning him to other duties and limiting when the children could visit the staff quarters. From the kitchen, Arjun heard his daughter's voice growing quieter each day. Mira noticed too. He saw her pause while folding laundry when Ria's sharp tone drifted down the hallway, saw the way she gently corrected Rohan's homework when she was supposed to be cleaning his room, staying 15 minutes past her shift to help him understand his mathematics. One afternoon, Arjun was preparing afternoon snacks when Anya came into the kitchen, hovering near the doorway with the cautious body language of someone expecting to be told to leave. Can I stay here for a few minutes? She asked softly. Ria is on a business call and she said we are too noisy upstairs. Of course, little miss, Arjun replied in the rougher accent he'd adopted for his disguise, gesturing to a stool. I'm making coconut barfi. You're the lady of the house requested them for her tea party tomorrow, but I made a few extra. You can help me test them, make sure they're sweet enough. Anya climbed onto the stool, her legs dangling, and accepted a small square of the sweet with a shy smile that broke his heart. She ate it slowly, savoring each bite in a way that made him realize she probably hadn't had simple, homemade sweets in months. This tastes like, she started, then stopped, her eyes suddenly bright with unshed tears. Like what, Beta? Like something my mom used to make, she whispered. Before she died. The cook we had then used to let me help in the kitchen, and my mom would come down sometimes, and we'd all make sweets together for Diwali. Ria says that's not appropriate anymore, that the kitchen is for staff, and the family shouldn't go there because it looks wrong. Arjun's hands stilled on the counter. He wanted to pull his daughter into his arms and tell her that nothing about loving and being loved could ever look wrong, that her mother had never cared about those kinds of boundaries, that the home they'd built together had been full of laughter precisely because they hadn't worried about what society thought was appropriate. But Ajay the cook couldn't know any of that. So instead, he said gently, "Your mother sounds like she was a very special woman, and I think any home is better when it has love and sweets in the kitchen. You're welcome here anytime, little miss. This is a safe place." That's when Mira appeared in the doorway, slightly breathless from climbing the stairs. "Anya, there you are. I've been looking everywhere. You're supposed to be practicing piano right now." Anya's face fell, and she slid off the stool with the resignation of someone much older. But Mira knelt down to her level and said quietly, "I told Ria ma'am that I needed to check if your piano books were still in the library, and that it might take me 15 minutes to find them and bring them up. So you have 15 minutes. Why don't you stay here where it's peaceful, and I'll come get you when it's time?" She winked, and Anya's whole face transformed with surprised joy. After the child left with Mira a quarter hour later, Arjun found himself watching the young maid more carefully. She didn't have education or wealth or power, but she had something rarer: the instinct to protect those more vulnerable than herself, even at risk to her own position. Over the following days, he saw her sneak extra blankets into Rohan's room when he complained of being cold at night, saw her gently clean Anya's scraped knee when the girl fell in the garden and Ria told her not to make a fuss, saw her use her own money she desperately needed, to buy coloring books that she left in the children's playroom as forgotten items from previous staff. Late one night, unable to sleep in his narrow servant's bed, Arjun reviewed documents on the secure laptop he'd hidden in his quarters, cross-referencing the suspicious transactions with board records and shell companies. A pattern was emerging: money flowing out of the children's trust through consulting fees to a firm that didn't seem to do any actual work. The firm then transferring those same funds to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Singapore. The amounts had started small 6 months ago, before he'd even married Ria, suggesting she had been planning this for longer than he'd realized. But he couldn't trace where the money ended up, couldn't identify her accomplices, couldn't prove that she was the one authorizing these transfers. He needed more. He needed to see and hear her when she thought she was safe from observation. The answer came during a staff briefing about new security measures. Ria announced that she was installing additional CCTV cameras throughout the main house, in the hallways, the foyer, the drawing rooms. "For everyone's safety and protection," she said smoothly, her eyes scanning the assembled staff in a way that felt like a threat. "I want to ensure that nothing goes missing and that everyone is performing their duties appropriately. Gopal will have access to the monitors, and I'll be reviewing footage regularly." The staff exchanged uncomfortable glances, but no one dared object. Arjun realized immediately what Ria was doing: creating a surveillance system that would let her watch the servants and control them through fear, making it nearly impossible for anyone to act against her or even have a private conversation. It was brilliant and cruel. But she had made one mistake. She was focused on watching others, which meant she wouldn't expect to be watched herself. That night, using equipment ordered discreetly through Vikram and delivered to a postal box far from the mansion, Arjun installed a camera and microphone system of his own. He chose the chandelier above the main dining table as his primary location, a massive crystal fixture that Priya had commissioned from a Venetian artisan, hanging from a chain that allowed access through a ceiling panel in the attic above. The camera was smaller than a button, its lens disguised as a reflection point in the crystal, its microphone sensitive enough to pick up whispered conversations 20 feet away. He configured it to upload footage directly to a secure cloud storage account that only he and Vikram could access, with automatic backups and encryption that would survive even if the physical device was discovered and destroyed. When he finished near dawn, he stood in the attic and looked down through the gap at the dining table below, imagining it set for one of Ria's elaborate dinners. Every word spoken there would now be recorded. Every transaction discussed, every plan revealed, every threat made. The truth would have a witness, even if that witness was a tiny electronic eye that never blinked. He just had to wait for Ria to expose herself. The trap closed on Mira during a charity brunch on a bright Saturday morning. The mansion's gardens were filled with white-clothed tables, elegant flower arrangements, and 200 of Mumbai's most influential society members, all gathered to support Ria's new initiative for underprivileged children. The irony of that cause, given what Arjun now knew about how she treated the actual children in her care, made his stomach turn as he helped prepare elaborate appetizers in the kitchen. Meera was assigned to assist the senior servers, moving through the garden with trays of delicate pastries and glasses of imported champagne. Arjun watched through the kitchen window as she worked with quiet efficiency, invisible to the wealthy guests in her simple uniform, just another servant keeping their comfortable world running smoothly. He saw the moment it happened. Ria was standing with a cluster of elegantly dressed women, laughing at someone's story, her diamond bracelet catching the sunlight as she gestured. Then she suddenly stopped mid-sentence, her hand flying to her wrist with theatrical shock. "My bracelet," she gasped loudly enough to silence the nearby conversations. "It's gone. I was just wearing it. I felt it slide off when I was adjusting my sari pallu. It's a family heirloom, worth lakhs. My God, where could it have fallen?" The women around her immediately began searching the grass near their feet, exclaiming and sympathizing, while Ria's voice rose with calculated panic. "Everyone, please, if you could just check around your tables. It's a diamond tennis bracelet with sapphire accents, platinum setting. It must have fallen somewhere nearby." Servers and guests alike joined the search, creating chaos among the perfect garden arrangements. Arjun felt ice forming in his chest. He knew every piece of Priya's jewelry had been with her when she bought that bracelet for their 5th anniversary. It had never been a family heirloom. And Priya's jewelry should have been locked in the vault upstairs, designated for Anya when she came of age. 30 minutes of searching produced nothing, and Ria's distress morphed into something darker. "I think we need to be realistic about what might have happened," she announced, her voice carrying across the now silent garden. "A piece that is valuable doesn't just vanish. Gopal, I need you to do a thorough check of the staff areas. Everyone who is working today needs to allow their personal belongings to be searched. I hate to suggest it, but we can't rule out theft." Gopal's face remained professionally neutral, but Arjun saw the shame in his eyes as the old butler gathered the staff. They filed into the service corridor, where their bags and jackets were stored in lockers, the wealthy guests watching from the garden like spectators at a particularly entertaining show. Ria followed, along with several of her closest society friends, ensuring maximum audience for whatever she had planned. One by one, the staff opened their lockers. Ria made a show of carefully checking each one with her own hands, apologizing for the necessity, praising those who cooperated without complaint. When she reached Meera's locker, she paused. "This one is locked," she observed, her tone sharpening. "Meera, would you open it, please?" Meera stepped forward, her face pale but composed. "Of course, ma'am." She unlocked the small metal door and stepped back. Her locker held a worn canvas bag with her lunch, an extra dupatta, and a small coin purse. Ria lifted the canvas bag and opened it. From inside, she pulled out the missing diamond bracelet, holding it up to catch the light as gasps echoed down the corridor. "In her lunch bag," Ria said, her voice heavy with disappointed disbelief. "Hidden among her personal things, as if I would never think to look there." She turned to Meera with eyes that held triumph disguised as sorrow. "How could you? I've welcomed you into our home, trusted you with my children, and this is how you repay that trust." "I didn't take it." Meera's voice cracked with shock and fear. "Ma'am, I swear on my mother's life, I've never stolen anything. I don't know how it got there. Someone must have put it in my bag. Please, you have to believe me." "Someone put it there," Ria repeated, her tone making the very idea sound absurd. "And who would do that? One of your fellow staff members, whom you've known for barely 3 weeks. Or perhaps I put it there myself to frame you. Is that what you're suggesting?" She turned to her audience of society women and servants, playing to both crowds with practiced skill. "This is the problem with hiring from unreliable backgrounds. No matter how much sympathy you feel, no matter how much you want to give them opportunities, some people simply can't resist temptation." From the back of the crowd, Anya's voice rose with desperate certainty. Mira didn't do it. She wouldn't, she's the kindest person in this whole house. But Ria silenced her with a single sharp look that made the child flinch and fall quiet. Gopal tried to intercede. Ma'am, perhaps we should review the security footage before making any final conclusions. The footage from the garden cameras shows nothing useful. I already had it checked while we were searching. Ria cut him off smoothly. And the service corridor isn't covered by cameras because you all complained about privacy. How convenient for whoever planned this. She looked directly at Mira. Gather your things. You're dismissed immediately, without pay for this month, as compensation for the distress and embarrassment you've caused. I'm being merciful by not calling the police, but only because I don't want my children traumatized by seeing officers in the house. If you ever try to contact this family or work in any respectable household again, I'll make sure every employer in Mumbai knows exactly what you are. Mira stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, her whole body shaking. Around her, some staff members looked away in discomfort, while others watched with the blank expressions of people who had learned not to see injustice, because seeing it meant being forced to either accept their own powerlessness or risk their own survival. The society women whispered behind jeweled hands, their faces showing various mixtures of satisfaction, pity, and the particular cruelty that comes from watching someone below your class be punished for daring to exist in your proximity. Arjun watched from the kitchen doorway, his cook's apron twisted in his clenched fists, every instinct screaming at him to step forward and end this. He could reveal himself right now, fire Ria, restore Mira, and protect everyone. But he had no proof yet of the larger conspiracy, no evidence of who was helping Ria or what they ultimately planned for his children. If he exposed his investigation now, he would save Mira but lose any chance of uncovering the full truth, and the people who had helped Ria steal from his children's trust would simply disappear into the maze of shell companies and offshore accounts, free to try again with some other family. The children were sobbing now, both of them, Rohan's face buried in Anya's shoulder as his sister tried to be brave. Mira looked at them once, her expression full of heartbreak, then gathered her small canvas bag and walked through the parting crowd toward the service entrance. She held her head up despite the tears, and Arjun thought that whatever else happened, he would make sure she was compensated for this cruelty and would make sure everyone knew she had been innocent. But that knowledge did nothing to ease the weight of watching her go, or the sight of Ria's satisfied smile as she returned to the garden and her applauding friends, slipping the recovered bracelet back onto her wrist where it belonged. Mira's exile became a descent into poverty that was made worse by the shadow of accusation. She returned to Dharavi, to the single 12-by-12 room she shared with her mother in a building where the walls were so thin you could hear 3 families' arguments and prayers and cooking all at once. Her mother, Kamala, was waiting with anxious eyes, already having heard rumors through the vast network of servants and drivers that connected Mumbai's wealthy homes to its poorest neighborhoods. "What happened, Beta?" Kamala asked, taking her daughter's face in her worn hands. "Mrs. Kapoor from the next building said her sister-in-law's nephew works at the Malhotra mansion, and he heard you were dismissed for theft." "I didn't steal anything, Ma," Mira said, her voice hollow with exhaustion. "The lady of the house, she placed her own bracelet in my bag and then accused me in front of everyone. I don't know why she hated me, maybe because the children liked me, or maybe just because she could." She sank onto their single rope cot, still wearing her uniform because she owned so few clothes that changing hardly mattered. "I'm so sorry, I know we needed that income. I thought this job was going to change things for us." Kamala sat beside her, one arm around her daughter's shaking shoulders. Through their single window, the sounds of Dharavi flowed like water. Vendors calling out prices, children playing cricket in the narrow lanes, the industrial hum of the small manufacturing workshops that turned the slum into one of the most economically productive places in India, despite its poverty. "We'll survive," Kamala said firmly. "We always have. Your honesty is worth more than that woman's money." But honesty didn't pay for medicine or food. Over the following days, Mira learned exactly how much power the wealthy had over people like her. She visited every employment agency she knew, presented her references from previous positions, and tried to explain what had happened at the Malhotra mansion. The moment her potential employers realized who she was, the maid from the Malhotra theft, as the gossip networks labeled her, their expressions closed. Some were polite in their rejections, others coldly dismissive, but the message was always the same. A servant accused by a family like the Malhotras was unemployable in any respectable household. The risk was too high, the stain too visible. She found work cleaning offices in the early morning hours, 4 a.m. to 7 a.m., for wages that were barely enough to cover food. She took additional hours washing dishes at a restaurant, standing over scalding water until her hands were raw. She delivered lunch tiffins on foot through the dense streets, running to make the midday deadlines, competing with younger, faster delivery workers. By the end of each day, she was so exhausted she could barely climb the stairs to her room, and her mother would have to massage her legs to keep them from cramping in the night. The medical expenses mounted. Kamala's insulin couldn't be skipped, and the cheaper generic versions that Mira could now afford sometimes caused reactions that required additional medications to manage. They stopped eating fruit. They stopped using the shared bathroom's hot water. They started buying the lowest grade of rice, the kind with stones mixed in that had to be picked out before cooking, the kind that smelled slightly off but was half the price. One evening, after a particularly brutal day, Mira stopped at a roadside tea stall run by an elderly man named Ravi, a fixture in the neighborhood who had been serving chai there for 40 years. She bought the cheapest option, a small glass of black tea without milk, 4 rupees instead of 7, and sat on the wooden bench, too tired to walk the final 100 meters home. Ravi studied her with the assessing eyes of someone who had watched generations grow up on his corner. "You're the Sharma girl, aren't you? Kamala's daughter? I heard about your trouble." Mira nodded, too weary to be embarrassed. "Rich people," Ravi said, shaking his head as he wiped down his counter. "They think their money makes their lies true and our truth worthless. But I'll tell you something my father told me when I was young and angry about injustice." He leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Lies have short lives, Beta. They require constant energy to maintain, constant vigilance to protect. Truth is patient. It can wait in silence for years, but eventually lies exhaust the people who tell them, and truth emerges like a seed that was planted in darkness, finally reaching sunlight. Your job right now is to hold onto your integrity, because that's the seed. Don't let their cruelty make you cruel. Don't let their dishonesty make you doubt what you know is real." Mira felt tears burning behind her eyes. "What if the truth takes too long? What if my mother gets sick because I can't afford her medicine while truth is busy being patient?" "Then you fight," Ravi said simply. "You survive, and you fight, and you hold on to the people who matter. But you don't give up who you are. Because the moment you do that, they've won even if you eventually prove them wrong." She finished her tea and walked home as the sun set, painting the corrugated metal roofs of Dharavi in shades of orange and gold that made even poverty look beautiful for a few moments. In her pocket, her old mobile phone, a basic model she'd bought used 3 years ago, buzzed with text, "Unknown number." She almost deleted it as spam, then paused and opened it. "Mira Didi, it's Anya. I'm texting from my old tablet that Ria doesn't know I still have. Please don't tell anyone. Are you okay? I miss you. Something bad is happening here." Mira stopped in the middle of the crowded lane, causing 2 men to curse as they swerved around her. She typed quickly, "I'm okay, baby. I miss you too. What's happening? Are you safe?" The response took 5 minutes, and she could imagine Anya hiding in a bathroom or under blankets, typing in terrified bursts. "Ria makes us take vitamins now every morning and night. They taste weird and bitter. After we take them, we get so tired and everything feels fuzzy. Rohan fell asleep during his tutoring yesterday, and the teacher said something was wrong, but Ria told her we were just being lazy. Ajay uncle in the kitchen seems worried, but he can't say anything. Didi, I'm scared. I wanted to tell Papa, but Ria says he's too busy in Europe and we're not allowed to bother him with complaints. Can you help us? Mira stood in the fading light, her chest tight with rage and helplessness, and typed the only thing she could. I won't abandon you, I promise. Be careful, don't let her see these messages. I'm going to find a way to help. You're so brave, Anya, hold on. That night, lying on the rope cot while her mother slept beside her, Mira stared at the ceiling and made a choice. She didn't have money or power or connections. But she had love for two children who were in danger, and sometimes love was the only tool that mattered. She would find a way back to that mansion, and she would protect them, even if it cost her everything she had left to lose. Inside the Malhotra mansion, the atmosphere was slowly changing in ways only someone watching carefully would notice. Arjun, still disguised as Ajay, observed from his servant's vantage point as Ria systematically consolidated power. She dismissed the family's longtime chauffeur, replacing him with someone from an agency she had personally vetted. She let go the head of housekeeping, a woman who had worked for Arjun's parents, citing budget concerns despite the fact that the household accounts showed no financial strain. She brought in new security staff who reported directly to her, and she began controlling access to the children with increasing strictness. The children themselves were deteriorating. Anya's bright energy had faded to listless compliance, and Rohan was having trouble concentrating even on his favorite activities. They complained of stomach aches and headaches, slept through their alarm clocks, and moved through their days like ghosts. When Arjun quietly mentioned to Gopal that the children seemed unwell, the butler said, in a voice carefully pitched not to carry, "The family doctor came last week. He examined them and seemed troubled. But Mam Ria spoke with him privately afterward, and he wrote something about stress and adjustment in his notes. I heard her tell him that if he thought she was abusing the children, he should say so directly instead of hiding behind vague medical concerns, and he backed down. He'll be here again next week for their regular checkup." Late-night visitors became more frequent. A man named Karan appeared regularly after the children were in bed, parking his expensive car in the side driveway and entering through the garden entrance that wasn't covered by the visible security cameras. He dressed in designer suits and wore the kind of watch that cost more than most people made in a year, and he treated the mansion staff with casual contempt, snapping his fingers when he wanted something and never saying please or thank you. Arjun had run a background check through Vikram. Karan Mehta, age 38, investment consultant, owner of a boutique firm that specialized in wealth management for high-net-worth families. No criminal record, but several civil suits filed by former clients alleging mismanagement of funds, all settled out of court with non-disclosure agreements. One night, Arjun's hidden camera captured a conversation between Ria and Karan in the dining room. They thought they were alone, the rest of the house dark and sleeping, staff dismissed to their quarters. Ria poured whiskey from Arjun's personal collection, an 18-year scotch that had been a gift, and they sat at the long table where family dinners had once been happy events. "The timeline is accelerating," Karan said, his voice tense. "Your husband's business trip is only scheduled for another 2 weeks, and we still haven't gotten the guardianship papers signed by enough board members to make them legitimate." "If he comes back and starts asking questions, he won't," Ria interrupted smoothly. "Arjun is predictable. He'll bury himself in work for another month at least, and by then it will be too late for questions to matter. The children's trust transfers are ready to execute once I have full authority. The offshore accounts are established. Your firm will handle the investment reallocations. We'll extract 70% of the trust value before anyone notices the irregularities, and even if it's eventually discovered, the investigation will take years and the money will be impossible to recover from the jurisdictions we've chosen." "And the children themselves?" Karan asked. "You can't keep sedating them forever. Eventually someone will notice. Teachers, doctors, extended family," Ria smiled, and even through the camera's recording, the expression made Arjun's blood run cold. That's what the foreign treatment center is for, she said. I've already planted seeds with the family doctor that they're showing signs of emotional disturbance, that their mother's death traumatized them more deeply than anyone realized, that they might need specialized psychiatric care in an environment away from painful memories. Once I have guardianship authority, I'll send them to a very private, very expensive facility in Switzerland, one that understands discretion and accepts long-term residents without asking too many questions. By the time anyone realizes they're overly medicated, I'll simply say the doctors they recommended the treatment protocol. Arjun will be devastated, of course, but he'll be too busy trying to recover his stolen assets to fight a custody battle across international borders. And if he gets too aggressive about investigating, she paused, swirling her whiskey. Well, accidents happen, business travel to dangerous countries, health crises, you can arrange that aspect if necessary. Karen raised his glass in a toast to aggressive asset reallocation and the foolishness of sentimental billionaires. They drank, and above them, the hidden camera recorded every word. Arjun watched the footage later in his quarters, his hands shaking so badly he had to set down the laptop. She was planning to steal his children's entire inheritance, ship them to a foreign institution where they'd be drugged into compliance, and possibly murder him if he interfered. This had never been about love or partnership. From the very beginning, before she'd even married him, Ria had seen him and his children as nothing more than access points to wealth, and she'd spent months carefully positioning herself to take everything. But now he had proof. Video and audio evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, child abuse, and potentially attempted murder. It was enough to go to the police, enough to have her arrested, yet it still wasn't enough for what he needed. He needed to know exactly how she planned to move the money, needed to identify all her accomplices in his own company and board, needed to ensure that when she was exposed, the entire network was destroyed so thoroughly that no piece of it could ever threaten his family again. And he needed to do it in a way that would be public and undeniable, because private accusations could be defended against by expensive lawyers and well-crafted lies. He sent the most damning footage to Vikram with a secure message. Prepare for full legal action, but don't move yet. I need the complete picture. Also, trace any property or institutions in Switzerland connected to psychiatric care facilities and Karen's investment firm. She's planning to send the kids abroad. Vikram's response came at 3 a.m. Arjun, what you're doing is dangerous. If she discovers you're investigating, she might accelerate the whole plan. The children could be on a plane before we can stop her legally. Consider revealing yourself now and filing for emergency custody protection. But Arjun knew that revealing himself without absolute proof would lead to a protracted legal battle, media circus, and trauma for Anya and Rohan that might never heal. His children had already lost one parent. He couldn't let them lose their faith in safety, in justice, in the idea that truth mattered. He had one more card to play, one more piece that might change everything. He reached out to Ria. The next morning, he approached her in the breakfast room where she was reviewing guest lists for an upcoming party. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said in his humble cook's voice. "May I speak with you about a staffing matter?" She barely looked up. "What is it, Ajay?" "It's about the young maid, Mira, who was dismissed. I've been noticing that the children have become much harder to manage since she left. They're more emotional, they're not eating properly, young Rohan has been crying at night, and Anya has been asking the staff about her constantly. It's making all of our jobs more difficult." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I understand that she betrayed your trust, ma'am, but from a practical standpoint, perhaps it would be helpful to bring her back under very strict conditions. It would calm the children, and it would save the cost of hiring an expensive professional caregiver to manage their moods." Ria studied him with calculating eyes. He could see her mind working through the angles. The children's attachment could be useful for public appearances. Keeping them docile would make her own plans easier, and having Mira back as a servant she could control and humiliate would demonstrate her power. Strict conditions, she repeated slowly, such as her salary could be reduced since she's coming back from a position of disgrace. She could be forbidden from entering certain areas of the house, including your private rooms. She could be monitored closely to ensure no further theft, and she could be made to understand that any mistake, however small, will result in immediate termination and police action this time. He delivered his suggestions with the pragmatic tone of a servant trying to make his own work life easier, nothing more. And you think she would accept those conditions after being publicly accused? I think she cares deeply about the children, ma'am, and I think she's desperate for employment. People in her situation have very few choices. Ria smiled slowly. You know, Ajay, you're more perceptive than I gave you credit for. Fine, contact her. I believe Gopal has her information. Tell her she can return, but make the conditions absolutely clear. I want her to know she's here on sufferance, that I'm being extraordinarily generous, and that she owes me not just her work, but her gratitude. Let's see how she likes being saved. Arjun bowed his head to hide his expression. Yes, ma'am, I'll contact her today. Later, he used a prepaid mobile to send Meera a message. This is Ajay from the mansion. The lady is willing to rehire you under strict conditions to help with the children. I know this is difficult, but I think you should accept it. The children need you, and things here are not safe. Please trust me. The response came 2 hours later. I'll do whatever it takes for Anya and Rohan. When do I start? Arjun felt a complex mixture of relief and guilt. He was bringing her back into danger, using her love for the children as a tool, just as Ria was. But he also knew that Meera was strong enough to endure, and that she might be the one person besides himself who would fight for Anya and Rohan regardless of personal cost. When this was over, he would make it right. He would make sure both she and the children knew that their courage had mattered, that they had saved each other. For now, he simply replied, tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. be prepared. And watch everything. Meera's return to the Malhotra mansion felt like walking back into a beautiful prison. Ria made sure to orchestrate the moment for maximum humiliation, calling a full staff meeting where she announced that she was giving Meera a second chance, despite the younger woman's betrayal, and that everyone should appreciate her compassion and mercy. Let this be a lesson, Ria said, her gaze sweeping across the assembled servants. I believe in forgiveness, but I also believe in consequences. Meera will be working under supervision, with reduced salary and restricted access. She is here because I choose to be generous, not because she deserves it. The other staff members avoided Meera's eyes, and she understood why. In the hierarchy of survival, association with a disgraced worker was dangerous. She accepted her new terms in silence. Half her previous salary, a cot in the small storage room off the kitchen instead of the shared staff quarters, complete ban from Ria's suite and study, and a requirement that she report her activities to Gopal every 2 hours. She wore her shame like armor, letting Ria believe she was broken and grateful, but inside she was watching and planning. The children's joy at her return was immediate and heartbreaking. Anya threw herself into Meera's arms the moment they saw each other, sobbing with relief, while Rohan clung to her side and refused to let go. They looked worse than when she'd left, paler, thinner, with dark circles under their eyes that no child should have. You came back, Anya whispered. I was so scared you wouldn't. I promised I wouldn't abandon you, Meera whispered back, smoothing the girl's hair, and I always keep my promises. Over the next week, she learned the full extent of what had been happening. The children showed her the vitamins Ria forced them to take each morning and evening, large capsules that made them drowsy within an hour, turning their days into a fog. They described how Ria locked them in their rooms some nights, telling the staff they were being punished for misbehavior, but really just keeping them isolated. They mentioned the man named Karan who visited late at night and who once told Ria, while they were supposed to be sleeping, that relocating children is always the messiest part of these arrangements. Meera shared these observations with Ajay whenever they crossed paths in the kitchen, speaking in low voices while preparing meals or cleaning dishes. The cook had been unexpectedly kind to her, offering gentle support and occasionally leaving simple food on her cot when he knew she'd worked through meal times. There was something in his eyes that reminded her of the few truly good men she'd known, her own father before he died, her school teacher who had encouraged her education before poverty forced her to quit and work. A quiet, steady integrity that didn't need to announce itself. "Something is very wrong in this house," Ajay said one evening as they worked side by side. "I've been watching Ria's movements, and I've seen documents left out accidentally that mention the children's trust accounts and foreign transfers. I think she's stealing from them, maybe planning something worse, but I'm just a cook. No one would believe me if I reported this. And I'm just a maid who was already accused of theft," Mira replied softly. "My word would mean even less, but we can't just do nothing while those children suffer." Ajay looked at her for a long moment, then made a decision. What if we gathered evidence? Real, undeniable proof that we could show to someone with power, a judge, a journalist, the police, not just our word against hers, but documentation. How would we do that? She watches everything. "The cameras, not everything," Ajay interrupted quietly. "There are places the cameras don't reach, moments when she gets careless, and there are tools we could use that she doesn't know about." He paused, weighing how much to reveal. "I have some technical skills. I used to work with security systems before I became a cook. I could install a hidden camera in a strategic location, somewhere Ria goes to have private conversations. And you have access to the children's rooms, to areas I can't reach without suspicion. Between the two of us, we might be able to build a case." Mira felt hope stir for the first time since the bracelet had been planted in her bag. "I'm willing to try. For Anya and Rohan, I'm willing to risk anything." "Then let's be smart about this," Ajay said. "We'll collect evidence carefully and systematically. We won't act until we have enough to destroy her completely." What Mira didn't know was that Ajay's hidden camera was already in place and had been recording for weeks, that he was building a case with the precision of someone who had spent his life managing complex operations. He didn't tell her about the camera because he needed her observations and access to be genuine, untainted by the knowledge that they were already being documented. And he didn't tell her who he really was because the fewer people who knew, the safer everyone would be. But he watched her care for his children with a gratitude that had no words, and he understood that when this nightmare ended, Mira Sharma would be more than just an employee. She would be family in the truest sense. The breakthrough came during one of the children's sessions with Ria. Mira had been folding laundry in the hallway outside Ria's study when Anya came running out, her face pale. Behind her, Ria's voice rose with sharp impatience. "Don't be so dramatic. It's just medicine prescribed by your doctor." Anya found Mira and grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the children's bathroom. Once safely inside with the door closed, the girl whispered urgently, "She has a drawer in her study filled with medicine bottles and papers. I saw it when she opened it to get my vitamins just now. The bottles have different names on them, not our names, and there were papers about banks and money. Mira Didi, I think Ajay uncle is right about her stealing. Can you look in that drawer when she's not there?" "Anya, that's very dangerous, please." The child's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so tired all the time, and Rohan is getting worse. He fell down the stairs yesterday because the medicine made him dizzy. What if she's trying to hurt us? You and Ajay uncle are the only ones who care. Please help us find proof so someone will believe us." Mira felt her heart break and harden at the same time. She pulled the brave little girl into a hug and made a decision that defied every rule she'd been given. "I'll try. But you have to help me. Can you and Rohan create a distraction tomorrow afternoon? Something that will make Ria leave her study and focus on you both for at least 10 minutes. Anya nodded fiercely. "We can do that. We'll spill something, or Rohan can pretend to be sick, or I can knock over one of her fancy vases and she'll have to deal with it. Not something that will get you hurt or punished too badly," Mira cautioned. "But yes, something that requires her immediate attention. Can you text me when you're about to do it, so I know when to go to her study?" They synchronized their old tablet and Mira's phone, establishing a simple code. Butterfly meant the distraction was happening and Mira should move. The next afternoon, while Mira was supposed to be cleaning the second-floor guest rooms, her phone buzzed with a single word. She heard Anya's voice from downstairs, calling urgently for Ria, followed by the crash of pottery and Ria's immediate angry response. Mira moved quickly to the study, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might be audible. The room was everything you'd expect from someone obsessed with appearances: elegant furniture, fresh flowers, framed photos of Ria at charity events. The desk was neat, everything carefully arranged. The locked drawer was on the right side. She pulled out the small screwdriver she'd taken from the kitchen toolbox and worked on the simple lock, her hands surprisingly steady despite her fear. The lock clicked open after 90 seconds of careful manipulation. Security designed to deter curious servants, not professional thieves. Inside the drawer was exactly what Anya had described. Medication bottles with prescriptions for names Mira didn't recognize, legal documents with dense text and official-looking seals, and bank statements from institutions in countries she'd barely heard of. She pulled out her phone and began photographing everything, working as fast as she dared. Pills labeled as sedatives and antipsychotics, dosages that seemed far too high for children. A document titled Guardianship Authorization, with Ria's name and legal jargon about authority over medical decisions and asset management. Bank statements showing transfers of millions of rupees to accounts in the Cayman Islands and Singapore. A passport with Ria's photo, but a different name. An old news article printed out, dated 5 years earlier, about a woman named Kavya Sharma who had been investigated for financial fraud in Delhi before charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. Mira's hands shook as she photographed the article. She was seeing the evidence of a criminal, someone who had done this before, who had planned the infiltration of the Malhotra family as carefully as a military operation. She was replacing the documents when she heard footsteps approaching rapidly. No time to relock the drawer. She shoved it closed, pocketed the screwdriver, and dove toward the bookshelf, grabbing a random book and pretending to dust it just as Ria flung open the study door. "What are you doing here?" Ria's voice was ice. "Cleaning, ma'am," Mira said, keeping her eyes down in subservient posture. "Gopal assigned me the second floor today, including all rooms. I'm sorry if I shouldn't have entered. I was just following my duties." Ria crossed the room in 3 strides and ripped the book from Mira's hands, then grabbed her wrist with surprising strength, twisting it to force Mira's phone into view. "Give me that now," Mira's mind raced. If Ria saw the photos, everything would be over. She'd be arrested or worse, and the children would have no protection at all. So she made a choice based purely on instinct. She let the phone slip from her suddenly limp fingers, sending it clattering to the hardwood floor, where it slid under the heavy antique cabinet that stood against the wall. "Stupid, clumsy girl." Ria shoved her aside and dropped to her knees, reaching under the cabinet, but unable to quite reach the phone. She stood, her face flushed with rage. "Get that phone out from under there immediately, or I'm calling the police right now and telling them you were attempting to steal my jewelry again." Mira knelt down and reached under the cabinet with her longer arms, buying seconds, her mind desperately calculating. She could feel the phone just beyond her fingertips. If she retrieved it, Ria would take it and discover everything. If she refused, she'd be arrested on false charges again, and the evidence would be lost anyway. Then Ajay's voice came from the doorway. "Excuse me, ma'am. I apologize for the interruption, but the caterer for tonight's dinner has arrived early and is asking for immediate direction on the menu changes you requested. He says he cannot wait because he needs to return to his kitchen to prepare." Ria turned, torn between her suspicion and her obsessive need to control every detail of her social events. "Right now. I'm in the middle of, he's quite insistent, ma'am, and he has other clients scheduled. He says if you cannot meet with him in the next 5 minutes, he'll have to proceed with the original menu." It was a gamble on Ajay's part, a complete fabrication that would fall apart if Ria called his bluff. But her addiction to appearances and her need to impress her society friends won out. She pointed at Mira with one shaking finger. "You stay exactly where you are. Don't move, don't touch anything. I'll deal with you after I handle this." She swept out of the room, already calling down the hallway for Gopal to bring the caterer to the small dining room. The moment she was gone, Ajay entered the study and closed the door quietly. He pulled the cabinet away from the wall with surprising ease for a man his age, grabbed Mira's phone and handed it to her. "Send those photos to this number immediately," he said, rattling off a series of digits. "It's a secure account that backs up to cloud storage she can't access. Do it now." Mira's hands shook as she composed the message and attached all 13 photos, then hit send. The progress bar crawled across her screen while Ajay watched the door. The message was delivered just as they heard Ria's voice rising in the hallway, arguing with Gopal about non-existent caterers. "Delete the photos from your phone," Ajay ordered. "All of them, including the deleted folder. She's going to check." Mira obeyed, wiping her phone's memory while Ajay pushed the cabinet back into place. When Ria stormed back in 3 minutes later, Mira was still kneeling by the furniture, her phone in her hand, showing nothing but her basic home screen and a few innocent text messages from her mother. Ria ripped the phone away and scrolled through it aggressively, checking photos, messages, apps. Finding nothing incriminating, she threw it back at Mira hard enough to bruise. "You get out of this room right now, and you don't come back without my explicit permission. If I find out you've been snooping or stealing or spreading lies about me, I will destroy you so completely that you'll wish I'd just called the police. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am," Mira whispered. "And you," Ria turned to Ajay, "there was no caterer, was there?" "My apologies, ma'am," Ajay said with perfect humble confusion. "He was here just a moment ago, asking urgently to speak with you. He must have grown impatient and left. I'll contact the company to reschedule if you'd like." Ria studied him with narrowed eyes, clearly suspecting deception but unable to prove it. "Get out, both of you, and tell Gopal I want security footage from this hallway for the past hour on my desk tonight." They left together, walking slowly down the hall until they reached the kitchen. Only then did Ajay say quietly, "The photos are safe. I have them." But this just became much more dangerous. "She knows someone is investigating her. We need to be extraordinarily careful from this point forward." "What do those photos prove?" Mira asked, her voice shaking from the adrenaline crash. "That she's not who she claims to be, that she's drugging the children, that she's stealing massive amounts of money from their trust, that she's done this kind of thing before." Ajay met her eyes. "It's enough to start building a legal case, but not enough yet to guarantee she'll be convicted and everyone involved will be exposed. She has expensive lawyers and she's been planning this for a long time. We need the moment when she actually moves the money or takes action against the children, caught on record in a way that she can't deny or explain away. We need her to condemn herself with her own words and actions." "How do we get that?" "We wait," Ajay said grimly. "And we watch, because people like Ria always get overconfident. They always believe they're smarter than everyone around them, and that's when they make mistakes." What neither of them knew was that Arjun's hidden camera had recorded the entire confrontation in the study, including Ria's threats and Mira's brave evidence gathering. The footage was already backed up in 3 separate secure locations, time-stamped and encrypted, building toward the moment when everything would be revealed. As Anya's 10th birthday approached, the mansion transformed into a stage for Ria's final performance. She hired the most exclusive event planner in Mumbai, spending what Arjun estimated must be close to 20 lakhs on flowers, decorations, catering, and entertainment for a party that was ostensibly for a child, but was really designed to showcase Ria's status and wealth. Invitations went out to 200 guests, business leaders from Arjun's company board, society figures, potential donors to Ria's various charitable causes, and enough journalists and photographers to ensure extensive coverage. Vikram, Arjun's lawyer, called the secure number with a growing alarm. "I've been tracking the children's trust accounts like you asked. There are massive wire transfers scheduled to execute on the day of the party. I'm talking about 70% of the trust value, nearly 800 crore rupees, set to move to offshore accounts in 3 separate transactions timed 2 hours apart. The authorization documents were filed last week using digital signatures and a power of attorney that appears to have your approval, though we both know it's forged. If those transfers complete, recovering the money will take years of international litigation, if it's even possible. Can you freeze the accounts? Arjun asked. Not without revealing that we know about the fraud, which would alert Ria and her accomplices. They'd disappear immediately, and we'd lose our chance to catch everyone involved. But Arjun, if we wait and something goes wrong, your children's entire inheritance could vanish in a matter of hours. Then we make sure nothing goes wrong, Arjun replied. I have a plan. But I need you at the party, with police standing by, and I need you to trust me one more time. The days before the party were tense with preparation and barely hidden conflict. Ria moved through the mansion giving orders, criticizing every detail, working herself into a state of controlled mania as she juggled the event logistics with her criminal conspiracy. She was on her phone constantly, speaking in terse fragments that Arjun's hidden camera caught and recorded. Yes, the bank authorizations are in place. The children will be sedated enough to appear for photos, but not alert enough to cause problems. We'll finalize the guardianship papers with board members during the reception, 3 transfers, staggered timing, have the tickets ready for tomorrow's flight. She was planning to drug the children at their own birthday party and possibly leave the country immediately afterward. Mira noticed Ria spending unusual time in the kitchen, supervising the preparation of the birthday cake with an intensity that seemed strange even for her perfectionist standards. The cake was a massive 3-tiered creation being made by a famous bakery, but Ria had insisted on specific modifications to the children's personal serving layers, claiming they needed to be nut-free due to allergies that neither Anya nor Rohan actually had. One afternoon, Mira watched from the pantry as Ria carefully transferred what looked like crushed pills into a small container of frosting, which she then instructed the confused pastry chef to use specifically for the top tier that the children would eat from. Mira reported this to Ajay immediately, and he added it to the growing mountain of evidence. But he still waited, because he needed Ria to implement her plan in front of witnesses, needed her to condemn herself so publicly and completely that no lawyer or judge could ever doubt what she had done. The night before the party, he gathered Mira, Gopal, and the family doctor, Dr. Sengupta, who had been quietly documenting his concerns about the children's declining health in personal notes he'd kept separate from the official medical files. Arjun had approached the doctor days earlier with carefully edited footage from the hidden camera, enough to prove that the children were being deliberately drugged, but not enough to reveal his own identity yet. Tomorrow is going to be difficult, Arjun told them, speaking in his cook's voice, but with an authority that made all 3 people look at him with new attention. The children are going to get sick in a very public way, and it's going to be frightening. But I need each of you to trust me and play your roles exactly as I direct, because we're going to expose someone who is very dangerous, and we're going to do it in a way that protects Anya and Rohan permanently. What roles? Gopal asked carefully. Doctor, you will be present as an invited guest. Ria doesn't know that I contacted you separately. When the children collapse, I need you to immediately examine them and be prepared to state loudly and clearly that they show signs of sedative overdose, not allergy or natural illness. Gopal, I need you to prevent anyone from removing the cake or cleaning up the table until I say otherwise. It's evidence. And Mira, I need you to stay close to the children all day, watching what they're given to eat or drink, and be prepared to tell the truth about everything you've witnessed, no matter how frightening it becomes. What are you going to do? Mira asked. Ajay smiled, and for a moment his face showed something that none of them had seen before, cold, brilliant fury. I'm going to make sure that justice isn't just served, but seen to be served by everyone who needs to understand that wealth and charm don't place anyone above accountability. The morning of Anya's 10th birthday dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect weather that Ria would later insist had been arranged by her excellent planning. The mansion gardens were transformed into something from a magazine spread. White silk canopies, elaborate flower arrangements that must have emptied 3 florists, a string quartet playing near the fountain, tables laid with crystal and gold-rimmed china. A stage had been built for speeches and entertainment, complete with a large screen for presenting photos and videos of the birthday girl. The guests arrived in waves of expensive cars and designer clothes, echoing and exclaiming over the beauty of everything. Board members from Arjun's pharmaceutical company, their wives dripping with jewelry. Society women who ran charity foundations and appeared regularly in lifestyle magazines. A few local celebrities and the children of other wealthy families. Journalists with cameras documenting every detail for their society pages. Anya and Rohan were dressed in expensive clothes that looked uncomfortable. Anya in a silk lehenga heavy with embroidery, Rohan in a small sherwani that made him look like a tiny adult. They moved through the party with glazed politeness, their eyes unfocused, speaking when spoken to, but clearly somewhere else inside their own heads. Guests commented on how well-behaved they were, how mature, what a wonderful job Ria was doing raising them. Ria herself was radiant in an emerald green designer gown that probably cost more than Mira made in 5 years. Her hair and makeup professional perfect, playing the role of devoted stepmother and gracious hostess with practiced skill. She gave a speech about the importance of family and the responsibility of wealth to give back to society, drawing applause and admiring comments. She presented Anya with an expensive necklace in front of all the guests, creating a photo opportunity that was captured by a dozen cameras. From the kitchen entrance, disguised as Ajay the cook, Arjun watched his children being used as props and felt rage so intense it made his vision narrow. But he forced himself to stay calm, to wait for the exact right moment. The cake was brought out in late afternoon, carried by servers in white gloves, while the quartet played and guests applauded. It was everything Ria had demanded. Massive, ornate, covered in fondant flowers and gold leaf, the top tier decorated specifically for Anya with her name in swirled chocolate letters. Champagne was poured for the adults, while children received colorful drinks. Ria orchestrated the cake cutting with theatrical precision, making sure photographers captured every angle as Anya and Rohan stood before their beautiful poison. The first slice came from the top tier, served to the birthday girl on fine china. The second slice went to Rohan. The children ate obediently, trained by now not to complain about bitter tastes or refuse food that adults told them to consume. Around them, guests chatted and laughed, plates filled with elaborate appetizers, the party flowing toward its perfect conclusion. Then, 6 minutes after her last bite of cake, Anya reached for her throat. Her face went pale, sweat breaking out across her forehead despite the pleasant weather. Her breathing became rapid and shallow. Rohan, 30 seconds behind her in the drug's progression, dropped his cake plate and sat down hard on the ground, his small body shaking. A guest noticed first, then another, and suddenly there was screaming as 2 children collapsed in the center of a lavish garden party while 200 people watched in horror. Guests surged forward and pulled back simultaneously, creating chaos. Mothers grabbed their own children away from the scene. Men shouted for doctors. Photographers' cameras flashed automatically, capturing images that would become evidence. Ria materialized at the center of the panic, her performance flawless. She dropped to her knees beside the children, calling their names with perfectly pitched maternal anguish. She ordered someone to call an ambulance. She held Anya's convulsing body with trembling hands, and then, with the timing of someone who had planned this moment, she turned and pointed across the crowd with one shaking, accusing finger. Her. I saw the maid Mira near the kitchen chemicals this morning. She's always been jealous of our family, of what we have. She must have poisoned the cake. Someone check the kitchen, check her belongings. Every face turned toward Mira, who stood frozen near the buffet table with her serving tray. The transformation in the crowd was instantaneous, sympathy becoming suspicion, horror becoming anger. 2 of the security guards Ria had hired moved toward Mira with grim purpose, while guests backed away from her as if she carried disease. Dr. Sengupta pushed through the crowd and knelt beside the children, checking their vital signs with professional efficiency. His voice carried clearly across the sudden silence. These children have been sedated. This is a medication overdose, not poison or allergy. Someone gave them a massive dose of sedatives, likely in their food just now. He looked up at Ria with open suspicion. Who prepared the cake? The bakery delivered it hours ago, Ria said, her voice ragged with grief. But she, pointing again at Mira, she had access to the kitchen all day, she could have tampered with it. I hired her out of pity after she was caught stealing from us before, and this is how she repays my mercy. Police officers who had been present as part of the party security moved forward to question Mira. One of them already had handcuffs out, prepared to make an arrest that would satisfy the wealthy crowd's demand for immediate justice. Board members surrounded Ria with protective concern, exactly the witnesses she needed to legitimize her guardianship claims. Everything was unfolding exactly as Ria had planned. The children drugged enough to require special treatment abroad, a scapegoat servant to blame, and 200 influential people who would testify that she had been the devoted stepmother trying desperately to save her poisoned children from a jealous employee's criminal act. It was perfect, until Ajay stepped forward from the edge of the garden, carrying a USB drive in one hand and speaking with a voice that no longer held any trace of humble servitude. "Before anyone is arrested," he said, his words cutting across the chaos with undeniable authority, "I suggest everyone see the complete security footage from this household. Not just the visible cameras that Ma'am Ria has been so careful to control, but the hidden camera that has been recording her private actions and conversations for the past month." Ria's head snapped toward him, her face transforming from grief to fury in an instant. "Who do you think you are? You're a cook. Guards, remove this man from—" "I am Arjun Malhotra," he said clearly, pulling off the grey wig and wiping away the aging makeup with one hand while the crowd gasped and cameras flashed. "I am the father of these children, the owner of this house, and the man whose wealth you've been systematically stealing while pretending to be my wife. And I have recorded evidence of every crime you've committed, including the drugging of my children at this very party." The silence that followed was absolute. Vikram appeared from the crowd with 3 police inspectors who had been standing by, prepared for this moment. At Arjun's signal, servers brought out a large screen and projector that had been positioned near the stage. Gopal connected Arjun's USB drive while 200 shocked people waited. The hidden camera footage began to play. It started with Ria and Karen in the dining room, discussing plans to move funds before he returns and establish guardianship control, their voices clear and undeniable. It showed Ria grinding pills into the children's morning juice while they were at school. It showed her staging the bracelet theft, carefully planting the jewelry in Mira's bag the night before the charity brunch. It showed her late-night calls with Karen, planning to ship the children to a treatment facility in Switzerland where they would be permanently sedated. It showed her, just that morning, carefully mixing crushed pills into the frosting for the cake's top tier while the pastry chef was on a break, ensuring that only Anya and Rohan would consume the drugged portion. The footage played without commentary, each scene more damning than the last. Ria's face was drained of color. She tried to run, actually stood and attempted to push through the crowd, but the police officers caught her before she'd moved 10 feet. Karen, who had been present at the party as a business consultant, tried to slip away through the garden entrance and was stopped by more officers who had been stationed there specifically for that purpose. When the final clip finished, Ria instructing Karen over the phone that morning to make sure the bank transfers execute on time regardless of what happens at the party. Vikram stepped forward with bank documents showing the scheduled wire transfers of 800 crore rupees from the Children's Trust, frozen just 2 hours earlier on emergency court order. "These people," Vikram announced to the assembled crowd in a voice like judgment, "have been running a sophisticated fraud operation targeting this family's wealth. The woman you know as Ria Malhotra is actually Kavya Sharma, previously investigated for similar crimes in Delhi. She has been drugging these children systematically for months, stealing from their trust accounts, and planning to permanently remove them to a foreign institution where their abuse would go undetected. She attempted to frame the maid Meera Sharma for theft to remove a witness who was getting too close to the children, and she attempted to create a medical emergency today that would justify her guardianship claims and complete her theft of the children's inheritance. The police inspector took over, his formal words carrying the weight of law. Kavya Sharma, also known as Riya Malhotra, is under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, child endangerment, theft, and identity fraud. Karen Mehta, you are under arrest as an accomplice to these crimes. You both have the right to remain silent, Riya fought as they handcuffed her, her carefully constructed persona shattering into something ugly and desperate. She screamed that it was all lies, that Arjun had fabricated the evidence, that everyone was conspiring against her. But her denials sounded hollow against the clear video footage, the bank records, the testimony of Dr. Sengupta about the children's systematic sedation, and the physical evidence of the drugged cake that Gopal had carefully preserved exactly as Arjun had instructed. When Karen tried to claim he was just a financial consultant following his client's instructions, Vikram presented documents showing his firm's central role in establishing the shell companies and offshore accounts, along with communications detailing his knowledge of the entire criminal conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming, layered, undeniable. Paramedics arrived to treat Anya and Rohan, administering medications to counter the sedatives while their father knelt beside them, no longer disguised, holding their hands and murmuring assurances that they were safe now, that the nightmare was ending. The children, already recovering from the relatively mild overdose Riya had calculated to frighten rather than kill, stared at their father with confusion and then dawning, tearful joy. "Papa," Anya whispered. "You were Ajay, uncle. You were here the whole time." "I'm so sorry I had to hide," Arjun said, his voice breaking. "I had to see the truth to protect you, and I had to gather proof so that no one could ever hurt you again. Can you forgive me? You came back," was all Rohan said, clinging to his father. "You came back." Across the chaotic garden, Meera stood with tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the reversal of her own near arrest and the revelation of Ajay's true identity. Arjun looked up and caught her eye, then stood and walked to where she remained frozen among the dispersing crowd. He took both her hands in his, oblivious to the watching guests and cameras. "Meera Sharma," he said clearly, "you protected my children when I failed them. You risked everything for their safety, with no expectation of reward or recognition. You have shown more courage and integrity than anyone in this crowd who had 100 times your resources and chose to look away from injustice because it was convenient." He paused, making sure every camera and every important guest heard what he said next. "From this moment forward, you are not an employee of this household. You are a permanent member of this family with all the security and respect that entails. You will never fear poverty or false accusation again, and my children will grow up knowing that the woman who truly saved them was you." The applause that followed was hesitant at first, then genuine, as the wealthy crowd realized which side of history they needed to be on. Meera could barely speak, could only nod and hold onto the hands of a billionaire who had disguised himself as a cook to learn the truth about goodness. The party ended in a chaos of departing guests, police vehicles, and journalists scrambling to break what would become the biggest society scandal of the decade. By evening, the mansion was quiet again, cleared of strangers, with only family and the loyal staff remaining. The trial took 4 months, but the outcome was never in doubt. The video evidence, combined with the frozen bank accounts, forensic analysis of the drugged cake, and testimony from Dr. Sengupta, Meera, and eventually 2 other victims whom Kavya/Ree had defrauded in previous schemes, built a case so strong that even her expensive defense lawyers advised her to accept a plea bargain. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison for attempted murder, fraud, and child endangerment. Karen received 15 years as an accomplice. The board members of Arjun's company who had been preparing to sign Ria's fraudulent guardianship documents, were not charged criminally, but were quietly forced to resign, their reputations destroyed by their willingness to legitimize the theft without proper verification. The 800 crore rupees was recovered fully and returned to the Children's Trust with additional legal protections that would prevent any future similar scheme. Arjun established a foundation in Priya's name dedicated to protecting vulnerable children in wealthy households, with Meera serving as its director after she completed a fast-track degree in social work funded by the family. The mansion itself changed in the months following the trial. Arjun reduced his business travel drastically, choosing to manage his empire from Mumbai and prioritizing evenings with his children over international deals. The cold, appearance-focused atmosphere that Ria had imposed was replaced by something warmer and more genuine. Family dinners where laughter was encouraged, homework sessions at the kitchen table, movie nights with the staff invited. Anya and Rohan recovered physically from the sedation within weeks, but the emotional healing took longer and required therapy, patience, and the constant reassurance that they were safe and loved. Dr. Sengupta became their regular physician, monitoring them carefully and celebrating each milestone of recovery. The return of Anya's bright curiosity, Rohan's nightmares finally stopping, both children regaining healthy weight and energy. One evening, about 6 months after the trial, Arjun found Meera in the garden with both children, helping them plant flowers in a section that Priya had once maintained as her private sanctuary. Anya was explaining to Rohan the difference between Jasmine and Champa, her voice confident and happy. Meera knelt in the dirt in casual clothes, laughing as Rohan accidentally dumped an entire bag of fertilizer in one spot. Arjun approached quietly and knelt down beside them, no longer needing any disguise, comfortable in simple clothes and with dirt under his own fingernails. "This looks good," he said. "Your mother would have loved seeing you both gardening." "Meera Didi was telling us about her," Anya said, "about how Mama used to come to the kitchen and make sweets with the staff, and how she never cared what society people thought about what was proper." "That's true," Arjun confirmed. "She believed that the only thing that really mattered was how you treated people, especially people who had less power than you." Rohan looked up at Meera with sudden seriousness in his young face. "Didi, can I call you something else? Didi sounds like you're just my friend's sister, but you're more than that. You're like Mama was. You protect us and love us even when it's hard." Meera's eyes filled with tears. "Rohan Beta, you can call me whatever feels right to you. Could I call you Mama?" he asked in a small voice. "Not to replace our real Mama who died, but because you're also our Mama now. Can someone have two Mamas?" Arjun watched Meera's face transform with overwhelming emotion. Joy and grief and love all mixed together, the expression of someone being given a gift they never dared to hope for. She looked at Arjun with uncertainty, and he nodded with his own tears starting. "Yes," Meera whispered, pulling Rohan into a hug while Anya joined them. "Yes, someone can absolutely have two Mamas. And I would be honored to be that for you if you're sure." "I'm sure," Rohan said against her shoulder. "You saved us. You're our hero." As the sun set over the mansion, painting the gardens in shades of gold and rose, the four of them stayed there in the dirt, holding each other in the place where flowers were beginning to grow again. Inside, Gopal was preparing dinner with the new cook, the real Ajay Kumar, who had agreed to come work for the family permanently after his friend's dramatic reveal. Other staff members moved through the warm, lit rooms, no longer afraid of cameras or accusations, working for a household that had finally learned the difference between appearance and substance. The Malhotra mansion had been a stage for betrayal and cruelty, a beautiful shell hiding corruption and abuse. But now, slowly, it was becoming something real, a home where children could be children, where staff were treated with dignity, where the size of your bank account mattered less than the size of your courage. 1 year after the birthday party that had changed everything, Arjun gathered the extended family and key staff for a small, private ceremony in the same garden where justice had been served. This time there were no society journalists, no wealthy strangers, just the people who mattered. He announced that he had legally adopted Mira as the children's co-guardian, giving her full parental rights and authority equivalent to his own. He presented her with documents showing a trust established in her name that would ensure her financial security regardless of what happened to him. And he asked her, in front of everyone who loved them, if she would consider making their unconventional family permanent by accepting a role that was something between mother, guardian, partner, and friend, a relationship that defied traditional categories but was absolutely real. Mira, who had started this journey as a poor maid scrubbing floors and being accused of theft, stood in designer clothes that she still felt uncomfortable wearing and looked at the man who had disguised himself as a cook, at the children who called her Mama, at Gopal and Dr. Sengupta, and all the others who had fought for truth. "I accept," she said simply, "not because of money or status or security, though I'm grateful for all of that, but because you've all taught me that family isn't about blood or law or social position. It's about showing up when someone needs you, about protecting people even when it costs you, about choosing love over convenience." The celebration that followed was quiet and genuine. Homemade sweets from the kitchen, music from a simple speaker instead of a hired orchestra, children running freely in the evening light. At one point, Anya took Mira's hand and her father's hand and said, "I want to take a photo right here, where the bad thing happened, so we can remember that bad things can turn into good things if people are brave." They took the photo. A billionaire, a former maid, and two children who had survived a nightmare and emerged stronger. The picture showed them smiling in front of the exact spot where a drugged birthday cake had almost destroyed them, where courage and hidden cameras and patient justice had instead led to healing. That photo went on the mantle in the main living room, not hidden in an album or posted to social media, but displayed prominently as a reminder. Guests who visited would see it and sometimes ask about it, and Arjun would tell them a simplified version of the story, always ending with the same sentence. "We learned that the truth about people isn't found in their appearance or their charm or their position, but in what they do when they think no one important is watching." In a wealthy society that often valued appearance over substance, power over compassion, and status over integrity, the Malhotra family became something quietly radical. Proof that justice was possible, that courage could be found in unexpected places, and that the measure of a person had nothing to do with where they were born and everything to do with what they chose when tested. The hidden camera that had recorded everything was removed from the chandelier and kept in a safe as evidence and reminder. The mansion that had been a stage for a con artist's performance became a genuine home. And the children who had been seen as obstacles or resources became simply children again, protected, loved, and given the space to grow into whoever they wanted to become. As Mira later told new staff members during orientations for the Family Foundation, "There's always a hidden camera in life, maybe not a literal one, but truth has a way of being recorded in people's memories, in consequences, in the patterns that emerge when lies finally fall apart. The only way to live without fear of that hidden camera is to live as if everything you do will someday be seen and judged, not by society or wealth or power, but by the people you claim to care about and the values you claim to hold. That's the camera that really matters." Truth had been patient, as the old tea stall owner Ravi had promised. It had waited quietly in a lens no bigger than a button, in encrypted cloud storage, in the observations of a cook who was really a father and a maid who was really a hero. And when the moment came, truth had spoken with undeniable clarity, exposing evil and protecting innocence. The sunrise over the Malhotra mansion now brought light to a household built on something more lasting than appearances. The radical foundation of integrity, courage, and love. In a world that often rewards deception and punishes vulnerability, it's easy to forget that truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. It only needs witnesses brave enough to stand in the light. The powerful can control appearances, manipulate systems, and silence convenient voices. But they can never control what lies in the hearts of those they underestimate. The cook who is really a father, the maid who is really a warrior, the children who are braver than anyone gives them credit for. What would you have done in Mira's place when protecting the vulnerable meant risking everything you had? If this story reminded you that courage is found in unexpected places and that justice, though sometimes slow, is always worth fighting for, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to remember that truth matters. Your comments and thoughts mean the world to us. Until the next story, remember, the hidden cameras of life are always recording. Make sure your truth is worth revealing.